Hi, and welcome to A Class of Their Own podcast, revealing the human stories behind their name. We will hear honest and intimate reflections from our guests who, despite their circumstances, shape a world that reflects their unique visions of success. Join me, Mira Magecha, to learn from these inspirational people and take the first step to make your own change. On today's episode, we're joined by Laura Pettitt. Hi, Laura. How are you?
I'm good. You?
Good. How's your day?
Yeah, it's been really good, actually.
I'm interested in this conversation because I think you're going to take us down a little journey of who Laura is, how she's got to be in the roles and positions you're in. And I'm really interested to hear all the little nuggets that I don't know about you already.
Where do you want me to start?
Who is Laura?
It's a strange question. That feels like an interview question and you're like, I'm a woman with a dog and a cat. I live in East London. I like wine, probably too much. I like to exercise, mostly to counteract the wine that I like too much. I don't think I'm overly complicated, if I'm honest. I have a wonderful partner, really good friends. I think I'm pretty average when it comes to who I am.
And how would you describe yourself in a normal situation if we weren't sat on a podcast?
Outspoken, funny at times. Again,
I'm expecting some humour here.
Depending on the circumstance. Honest, probably too honest. It gets me in trouble. You've told me that a few times.
Yep.
Actually, you've told me that more than a few times. Pretty firm in my morals. Again, sometimes to a fault, I think. It can be problematic. And fun. Sometimes too much fun if wine is involved. So I'm trying as I get older to have a little bit less wine.
Fun and less wine.
Well, no, I still want fun. I just don't handle the next day. So I'm trying to be much better at sensible fun. I'm just an ordinary woman, really.
Where did your childhood start?
I was born in Kingston upon Thames. I don't know why I didn't just say Kingston, but literally born there. So where the hospital is, there's a big row of council flats across the road, and I was in the council flats, but I was born in the hospital.
So literally across the road from where you lived?
Like literally here to there. I don't know if my mum walked there or how it happened, but yeah, I was born. And
siblings and family?
That's complicated, and you know that, which is why you asked.
I don't know what you mean.
So I have my brother and sister from my mum, who I'm very close to. My sister lives in Vancouver. My brother actually has been in London his entire life. I'm the baby. They're in their 50s. But my brother's just moved actually to Hampshire. And then I have a sister from my biological dad, who I didn't meet until I was maybe 33, 34. I have two, in fact. One I see more, who's just wonderful. She's a social worker. Everything that is good in the world is her. Then I have a stepbrother through my stepdad. And then through my first stepdad, I don't see these people anymore either. I had three. One stepsister, one stepbrother, two stepbrothers, one died. Complicated. And another one that was adopted, so we don't know her.
And what is it about family dynamics that shows up in who you are today?
I guess I feel like I'm on that long lost family or something and I'm about to weep. I think probably like I'm quite driven. And I think part of my drive is a bit of a chip to prove that I can be more than people expected me to be. And I think partly my family shaped that. My mum is incredible. She's a really strong woman. So my mum had my brother and sister when she was a teenager. She grew up in Hampshire, moved to London with her then husband, and then ended up in a hostel with both of them. And somehow, just through sheer determination, worked non-stop, even with two kids, I was an accident to my biological dad, who was a drug addict, and and had me. My mum is a wonderful woman, but hasn't always made the best choices when it comes to men. I think she'd probably admit that herself. So was left with me as a single mum again. My brother and sister's dad is in the picture, and I think has always worked really hard, and people have probably expected less of her. So she didn't ever not work. She never claimed benefits. She just worked her arse off and went from a hostel to a council flat to owning the council flat to owning her house. And yeah, I'm pretty proud of her, really. So I think I've probably got some of my drive from her. But when we moved so I grew up, Kingston's a fancy area anyway. So if you're in a council estate, it doesn't mean it's the nicest, but you're still surrounded by wealth. But then when we moved to Thames Ditton, like all of my friends were fancy, you know, like, so when I grew up, the lady that used to babysit me, she's brilliant. I ended up working in a toy shop with her when I was 16. And one of her mates popped in she was like, oh, she's just got out of prison for murdering her husband. So like genuinely. And I was like, all right. So there's like the dichotomy of the two worlds was quite severe. Thames Ditton was posh, really white. I mean, I'm white, but really white, really posh. Like I went to friends' houses that had swimming pools, you know, and I'm
nice.
Like, yeah, it was wonderful. But that in itself is really different. So all my teachers expected less of me. Like literally every test, like English test specifically, they'd phone my mum up and be like, she's cheated. And I never cheated. I was just smart, but they just thought I was an idiot. So I guess it's not just like my family. It's probably a little bit of like the environment that I was in, I guess. I mean, I was Larry. Like I had issues when I was a kid, not like serious issues, but I think I was quite angry with the world for a long time. My brother used to take me to boxing, which I loved. My brother was like my dad for a long time. He was wonderful. So I'd take sort of any anger out there. But yeah, I think my teachers, certainly when I moved to secondary school, always just thought I was a bit of a Larry little shit. And I think they were right, actually.
But what, in hindsight, looking back, what do you think the Larryness, anger was all about?
I guess just being a kid is challenging, right? You've got hormones and things generally. I think it always irked me that my brother and sister had a dad. Not that that's their fault at all, but it felt like I wished I'd had one. I had a stepdad who I thought was my dad, so I used to call him Dad. I found a passport when I was younger, and I had a different surname. And then it turned out he wasn't my dad, which actually in hindsight wasn't a bad thing because he was a bit of a dick. But I didn't see him again from the age of 12. He just left. So he was always my dad, and then that was it. He just wasn't there. As much as, you know, by name he was my dad, I don't think he acted like one, in fairness. And then my next stepdad moved in. So I think just there's a lot of things to unpick there if you're a little girl and you're a little bit lost. But no more than anyone else. People go through like much, much worse. And I think I've just got a real, like I said, my moral compass. If I don't agree with something, I'm getting better at learning to at least be quiet for a minute, but I didn't have that in me as a kid. So if I see something that's happening and I don't think it's kind, or I think it's wrong, or it's wholly unfair, and I think being surrounded by lots of posh kids, I had a real chip on my shoulder because it felt wholly unfair, like I was always the underdog. Then I tend to speak out a little bit more. It's like if I'd get in trouble, I remember one teacher, I can't remember her name actually, she hated me, but if I spoke, she'd always pull me up on it. But all of the cutesy posh kids would be speaking and they'd never get in trouble, but as soon as I opened my mouth, she'd pull me up on it. And rather than saying sorry, which would be smart, I would say, I'm fine, you can put me in detention, I can apologise, but only when you say the same to them. So.
And what was the situation? What was the scenario? Did she pull them up ever?
No, she'd never pull them up. She'd never ever pull them up, really. And I think that's society, right? Honestly, if you go through life, when you really start to see it. And when I was younger, I probably wasn't balanced enough to just kind of go figure out another way round.
And how does that show up in who you are today? How does that come up in work, life, personal?
I don't know. I'm a lot more balanced now. Definitely have chilled out an awful lot. Don't know if my partner would say that, but I think I've chilled out a lot more than I used to be. To be honest, I think I'm much more understanding of different backgrounds, and I think I've just grown up a bit, and it's become less about me and feeling like I'm aggrieved and I've had a hard time, and realised actually you don't know what anyone else is going through, and that people come in all different shapes and sizes. And just because I think I always had this thing about posh kids, and actually I think growing up I've realised, as an adult now, that doesn't make you happy. That doesn't necessarily bring the things that I think I always thought they naturally got and were given. And I was taught that by an intern that worked for me at News UK, who is probably one of the kindest, most intelligent men I've ever met. You met him, Adam, who comes from more wealth than, I'm not talking a little rich, but he works so hard. And part of his struggle has always been, are people his friend because they're his friend, or are they his friend because they think he can help them climb somewhere? Which is heartbreaking, because actually when you know him, he gives so much of his time up just to help people, just because he can. He works on projects that are mind-blowing in terms of altering society, and he is more intelligent. I mean, he's just incredible, and I think he actually taught me a lot about my chip, so that's helped. But I still, certainly in organisations, and I still think now, the world isn't as progressive as we keep talking about, like especially in HR. Like, I knew you were going to do that, but it's not. Like, we all talk about, we'll take people based on aptitude and ability. We don't, 9 times out of 10. When I say we, I mean like
the holistic we.
The holistic we. And organisations don't really. And I think we still pay a lot of lip service to making change. And that frustrates me. So I'll speak up about it a lot. I've just learned that sometimes winning people over doesn't mean shouting at them. It's taken me a while.
And so let's talk about work. What is work for Laura?
As in, what does it mean for me, or
what do you do, and what does it mean?
So my background's in talent, and then I became a CPO in my last role at DNA, which you know because you kindly mentored me. And then I'm now Chief Culture Officer for Snag, which is like an apparel brand. I started selling tights. My real love is talent and culture. The reason I wanted to go the CPO route, and I'm still glad I did it, and I think ultimately that's where I'll end up again, is because, a bit like I said, everyone talks a good game and they say what we really care about is talent and what we really care about is culture. And we absolutely agree that if we have high-performing teams, we'll make more money. And we don't just want that because we want to make money. We want to do that because we believe in the greater good. Some companies do it. I did a year consulting with Costa Express. They were incredible. When I say that they meant it, they were just honestly mind-blowing. The way that their leaders approach people, the way that they approach leadership training, everything phenomenal. Snag is really good, but the majority of companies, I think, still fall back. But as like a talent leader, even as a talent leader, I hadn't gone through like the normal routes. I've always kind of done this, and that's partly because when people have said I can't do something, I'm like, well, I'm going to learn and I'm going to do it. And being a CPO for me was having a seat at the table to try and affect that change.
And a CPO as in Chief People Officer, not Chief Product Officer?
Yes. Yeah, I'm not that techie. Wouldn't be great.
And what is it about that passion of people and talent and culture that makes you want organisations to be better?
Because I think they're really fucking stupid. Like, I don't know how much more evidence needs to be shared that actually, if you create a working culture where people can thrive, where they're motivated by the work that they do, where it feels more like play than it does work, then they're going to perform better. If we don't burn them out, they're going to perform better. Ideation improves, your bottom line improves. And yet somehow, when it comes to the crunch, we forget everything. I went to a breakfast morning the other day, and this wonderful woman, I wish I remember her surname because I would have given her a shout out, Jess, who's the Chief People Officer at TrueLayer, was speaking about physiology in like the makeup now of employee experience, and it's something that we should be considering. And I loved her idea. and I'm sure it's not just her idea, but she certainly was championing it. But the reality is, what company do you know that really invests? Like, we will give you an EAP program, but we might run you into the ground, so you need to use the EAP program, but it's okay because we're here to support you when it goes wrong. We'll give you fitness programs, but we might not give you the time off to have fitness. We'll trust you to work from home during COVID, but oh my God,
you can't
all
do
of that
now.
ideation that you had then, you all of a sudden can't do now because we don't trust you. We'll be really flexible. So you can work till 8 o'clock in the evening, but if you need to go somewhere tomorrow, I'm not sure that it fits. And I think actually, unfortunately, we're all going back there for some reason. So I think if we could start to get that right, like, you know, my background is like, I was a recruiter at heart, and I probably still am a little bit. So commercially, I'm always like, does it make us money? Is it worth doing? With an undertone of, are we actually being decent humans whilst we're doing it? And I still think we're missing that. From an org perspective, like, is this the sensible thing to do? Are we actually supporting people? And at the moment, specifically, I think the world's gone on its head in terms of how headhunters are treating people, how internal recruitment teams are treating people, and just generally how we're recruiting. Because all of a sudden there's more talent than there are jobs. It's almost like we've all gone, let's all treat them like shit because we just can.
Yeah.
Which I just think is such a shame, right? So we were advertising at Pride, so I'm on the board of directors at Pride, and we were advertising for like their volunteer roles. So it's not technically a job, but you kind of need someone with a certain level of experience. So I was looking for a head of recruitment or talent, and I don't get imposter syndrome with that. I get it a lot, but not with talent. And honestly, the CVs that came through, I was like, shit. Oh my God, they're so, so good. But out of all of them, and I think I had about 50 in the end, that's my volunteer role. I also do a full-time day job. I still got back to everyone.
Yeah.
And I think I spoke to about 12 people because they were just so good, I couldn't not. And out of all of them, I got back to them. And I think halfway through the week, when I promised I'd get back to them, I thought, shit, I'm not going to. I haven't got the capacity. But I still dropped them a note and just went, I promised I'd get back to you. I'm not there yet, but I will. Give me another week. Like I think there's a respect that we need to start paying employees, especially if you look at Gen Z, because they don't care the same. Like, why would they? They're not got mortgages. Like, what do they owe you as an employer? I'm very passionate about it. I'll be quiet. You can probably tell. Sorry.
This episode is brought to you by Play for Change. Play for Change brings together leadership coaching, expert facilitation, and builds communities. They help craft real connections, spark learning, and turn play into powerful experiments to enable better relationships with yourself and others around you. Let's redefine how we connect and learn through play. To find out more, go to playforchange.co.uk, links in the show notes below. The way I'm hearing you is you put it through the work, through the talent and the culture and the organisations and the work that you do, and you give back in that way. That's how I'm interpreting it. What I'd like to understand is why and where does that come from?
I feel like I'm on a counselling session. I don't know. I guess it's probably the same, not feeling good enough. Like, you know, Laura, the one that didn't have a dad, and actually when I met him, it's another story, not one for today, it's not fair on my little sister. I didn't have a degree. I moved out of home quite young. So I've just always been scrambling. Like, I always had 2 jobs. And I think I feel like I've always been fighting to get somewhere. So as an example, I quit recruitment because I got fascinated by people and I really like people. Like, why would you work here rather than there? So I got this job, which when I'd worked with Costa in a brand experience company, which was one of the best years of my life from a learning perspective. And unfortunately, the company wasn't doing so well. So at the end of kind of that project with Costa, they'd said, look, would you be our head of sales instead? If I wanted to make money, I would go into a different type of sales or go back to recruitment. Not that I don't want to make money, but that wasn't my driver. But but actually there wasn't much for me to do in terms of project, but I'd learned so much. I was like, I know I want to carry on doing this and work in the experience space, so I'm going to say no. And I applied for jobs, and I had 2 wonderful colleagues, and actually they're both brilliant, so it's not to speak ill of them, but both had degrees. One had 2, but I outperformed both of them in terms of like customer satisfaction, revenue growth, etc. But the companies I was applying for that they would as well, they wouldn't even speak to me because I didn't have a degree, which I think is so short-sighted if you think about socio-economics, and that's probably my driver, actually, if I really look at it. So I started my own consultancy to prove to people that I could do it, because my options at that point would go back to recruitment, and I think I was like late 20s, early 30s. And I had like companies being like, we'll do pizza on a Wednesday and on a Friday we get pissed. And I was like, I'm a bit past that, to be honest with you. I'll have pizza with my mates. I don't really want to be stuck with you till 8 o'clock at night and ring a bell. And the companies I really wanted to work with that I thought I could learn from, I wasn't good enough for, because I'm like the council estate girl that doesn't have a degree, but there's never a consideration that like, well, she moved out young, she did 2 jobs, she's done all of this. I think in the short time I was in recruitment 7 years, but the first job I did, I was the highest biller consistently out of 100 men, and I was the only female. I didn't have a degree, I was just smart. So I think that's where a lot of my drive comes from, because I think how much untapped talent is there. And that doesn't mean that if you come from an academic background and you're educated, that you shouldn't also be afforded the same opportunity. But in terms of equity, I think we really need to address that. And I was on a round table last year, a really lovely woman from one of the big 4, which I won't mention which one. And she was ridiculously smart. She was really, really lovely. But she was talking about how much they'd done to like level the playing field. It was a load of crap. They're absolutely bringing in entry people, and that's a brilliant way to do it. They still wouldn't consider me. They still wouldn't consider someone 10 years younger than me. How are you going to really make the change? Because if you're bringing people in their early 20s, 18, etc., and these companies are headed by money, how are you actually going to start to make the change, and how are you going to appeal to your customers? So I'm absolutely not saying it should all be weighted to one type of group, but I think it does need to open up. So that's where my drive probably comes from, I think.
As a gay female, when did you come out?
To be honest, I didn't know I was gay. It's not like like some people just know. And again, like people will see this and strike me down for being like, you don't have to be a certain way. But if you grew up in the 80s, your version of a gay woman, or at least my version of a gay woman, was, plaid shirts and quite masculine. And that was never me. Like, I wanted to be a fairy princess. I would still not mind being a fairy princess. And I was a bit of a tomboy. I love football and things, but like all the stereotypical things that your mum, I'll tell you about what my mum said in a minute, like what you, when you're little, think of as gay people. And I didn't even really know that gay people existed. I think my big sister took me to Brighton once, and we went into a gay bar, and I was like, what is this? And even then it was gay men. So first of all, I didn't know what it was or that it existed. I think for a long time, or certainly until my early 20s, I liked men and women, and that was genuine. It wasn't like, I had a boyfriend for quite a while, so I was never with him thinking I wish I was with a woman. It just kind of happened organically. I always thought women were really attractive, but again, I just thought every woman thought women were attractive. I didn't think anything of it. And I kissed my best friend for a dare, because every 18-year-old girl does that once they've had a few shots. And it was gross. But she was my best friend. So I was like, I definitely don't like girls. And by the time I figured out I did, I told my mum. I didn't say I was gay because I'd left my boyfriend, and I don't know why, but I was really worried she'd find out that I'd kissed a woman. So I told her, and I remember my mum was like, oh, for fuck's sake, Laura, I thought you were going to say you were pregnant. And she was like, we've all kissed women. We've done more than that with women. It's just taken you a little while. And I remember literally nearly falling off my seat, being like, oh my God. And then I didn't say anything again for years until I met, I think, to be honest, I had less pressure from people around me. It was more my own internalised homophobia. I don't even know where that came from. I just think society for a long time has suggested it's wrong. And actually, if you look at what's going on at the moment, we're regressing, which is quite scary, which is why I want to be at Pride and on the board. So I think my own worst enemy was myself. I had probably quite a bit of negativity. I used to work with lots of women at an airport, and all of a sudden, like, you'd all get dressed in front of each other, and then they wouldn't get dressed in front of me. I was like, get over yourself. But mostly I haven't had that much hassle. It's more on the street when I was younger. Like, you'd have like some scary moments with men being like, you know, would you kiss in front of us? Would you do this? Or following you or trying to touch you. And some women can be pretty horrible as well. But I never really had it within friendship groups or anything like that. It was always people on the street. So even now, like with Hannah, depending on where we are, I won't hold her hand. And she's the same, because it's not always that safe. And I think if you're not gay, you maybe don't recognise the privilege that you have. Most of the time in London, I feel really, really safe. But there are certain streets or certain, like if I walk past a big group of men, they could be lovely. They might not have any objections, but instinctively, I'd let go of her hand just in case.
Wow. And that just feels strange. I wouldn't let go of a man's hand walking down the street, but the fact that you do that instinctively means there's something that's worrying.
Well, my facts might be slightly wrong, by the way, but we were for a long time, I think, number one for the best place if you're LGBTQ plus in Europe. We were like down to 18 or 19 in a year, and that's recently, and that's because being trans has been politicised, and to an extent, not to the same degree, but being gay has to an extent as well. So problems still exist, and I think if you haven't gone through it, you don't necessarily know. So mostly I feel fine. I'm so confident in who I am. Like I said, it's more about if I'm out and about, I might be careful. I might not. Just depends on, you know, what street, is it dark, all of those other things, how many men are there, or women, but predominantly it's men that would scare you a little bit more. I don't particularly have like a gay group of friends, just have a really mixed, some are, my best friends are, but a lot of our straight friends will go on holiday anywhere. Hannah and I need to think about where we go on holiday, because a lot of places in the world it's not safe.
Yeah.
So it's just like, it's like the little things that you take for granted. And then there's, I think, the moral aspect of like, God, I really want to go to that country because it looks beautiful. But if I was from that country, I'd be persecuted for being gay. So actually, where's my stance if I go?
Yeah.
I don't actually always have one. I don't know the answer, but lots to think about.
What was success for you growing up?
Well, I don't know. I've never thought about it. I don't know. I'm quite competitive. I think it's always just beating myself, really. Not physically. That would be a bit weird. Sorry. I don't know. Never really thought about it.
So when you were at school, for example, or when you were doing 2 jobs, was there a drive to help you achieve something, get somewhere, be somewhere?
I always want to be somewhere else. That's my biggest problem. Like, I'm always striving for the next thing. I think it's like this internal monologue of, to be good enough, you have to do more. But I don't know that I've got an end destination.
And what about now?
I guess it's, I don't really know that I've got an end destination now either. I want to learn more. Like, I'm motivated a lot by learning. I'm not someone that can sit in a classroom very easily. So learning for me is like going to talks or doing, or like I'll read a lot, but I can't, like, again, I'm not particularly academic. I'll try and listen, and 2 seconds later I'm on my phone and I don't even know I've done it. My attention span isn't great. So learning is a big thing, even if it's not in the traditional way. And I don't know, I guess ultimately it's one day someone going, you've made it. And I don't know who that person is, and I don't know what it would sound like. But that's what success looks like now, which is ridiculous because I don't know who would say you've made it. But yeah.
What's success for you and Hannah?
Or just being happy, which sounds uber cheesy, really. Getting our dog to walk with one of us rather than needing 2 of us at the moment would be really good because it's a pain. Yeah, just to be happy, I think.
You sound like there's been several seasons or several stages of your life so far. What stage are you in right now?
You ask questions that I've never thought about what my answer would be.
Are they helpful questions or just like what the
Well, I know I'm probably going to go home and question my life tonight and be like, why can't I sleep? Oh, Mira. I think I'm just content, truthfully. Like, probably the most content I've ever been in terms of, as I said earlier, I chase things a lot. Personal life, I'm not chasing, which is not normal for me, so that's good. Yeah, well, I say that. We're going to get our loft done this year and we get married this year, so we're not particularly standing still, but content.
And what comes next in terms of personal life?
You're asking if we're going to have babies.
I didn't ask that particular question, but are you going to have
you were angling
babies?
for?
No, I wasn't
Right.
at all.
Potentially, yes. I'm 41 in April and I'm tired already. So I can't imagine waiting much longer. Hannah's younger, so that helps if we were to try and have them biologically. Obviously, not us together. Maybe babies, more holidays. I'd really like to foster at some point. We've already started looking into it. Or maybe adopt. I think it goes back to like just... I mean, I guess my long-term goal, not right now, but would be to do something that gives back to kids and really just helps, because I think there's so many that need love and need support that I think just go unnoticed. And that probably gets to me more than anything if there's like something that really pulls on my heartstrings. So ultimately, if we could foster, I would love that. Or if we could, I don't know what it would look like. Like, my sister's a social worker and she's so incredibly kind. She also has the hardest job, actually, at the end of the day, and she helps kids. And I know how stressful she finds it, but I think that feeling of like actually making a difference probably goes back to the driver. Like, that's what I want to do, is actually make a difference. So yeah, something like that. Either that or we'll just have tons of rescued dogs and cats. We need to leave London. My house is not big enough for tons of dogs and cats.
We started this conversation with who is Laura? Based on the conversation we've just had and any reflections, is there anything you would add to who is Laura?
No, I'm just a normal, ordinary, happy-go-lucky most of the time, except a week before my period, and then I want to kill everybody that comes anywhere near me, and then I think my life is over and I want to cry an awful lot. But for the other 2.5 weeks, I'm pretty all right.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
If you enjoyed that conversation, then please share A Class of Their Own podcast with your friends and family and keep spreading the word to those that haven't discovered us yet. It makes a huge impact on our ability to have the people you want. Keep being you through connection, learning and play. You are a class of your own.